We like to party. Hey, hey. We like to party. Hey. All right. Oh. Okay, so I got all of that on. I guess I got all of that on the thing. Let's see. How can I do this? Okay, so that was interrupted. I hope this is still, let's see. Let's see. All right, so here I go. So, hey, can you, whenever, I'm going to ask this up here, let me know you're here. So I don't think I'm talking to myself. Yay, it's Saturday. It is Saturday. And I am so grateful to be here and feeling pumped and energized and all that good stuff. It is, it's an amazing day. So welcome, welcome, welcome. You see, I got my hair, woo! Couldn't find a brush. It's been like a whole month since I have done my hair. And I had those braids in, and I will tell you every time I usually only get braids once, maybe twice a year, because I only do them when I'm traveling. And I had never let them stay in that long. It was such a comfortable hairstyle that I didn't even think about it, right? I didn't think about it. And I lost, look, I grabbed one of the piles of hair, right? This is one of the piles of hair that came out of my head. This is a loss. I am like so outdone. I really want something that is carefree and that I don't have to put a lot of efforting into it. And I am trying to go natural, like working the perm out of my hair. So my color is natural, but I do have on the ends, I do have perm on the ends, but I probably got about this much is probably all like natural. And then the ends are still, I still got some perm in there. So part of me wants to just go natural, and but I need to have something. I still need to look, but you know what, I used to wear a natural when I was in college. I don't know that you can see this, but let me show you. I don't know if y'all can see this or not. So this is me with a natural haircut, and you can't really see the parameters of it. This is actually when I was in Italy. I was sitting at a table with some folks and drinking, and somebody, Anita was her name, and she put this camera up in my face and started just snapping pictures. And it's one of my, I like this picture because it is just like one of those pictures that is just, it just seems carefree. It's just so like in the moment, carefree, and just, it's kind of like being in Europe. It's that kind of feel. So anyway, excuse me putting myself all up in the thing. Anyway, y'all know I work out outside at 5 a.m. So I put on my workout gear and I go outside, and I did some jump ropes and stuff today, and was feeling good. All right, but today I'm back here, and we get to keep going through this work that we are doing in Anatomy of the Spirit. And Stephanie is out of town, and so I get to talk to you on my own. And sometimes I don't know. I don't get caught up in like, you know, numbers or who's watching, but sometimes I like to feel as though I am like I'm not talking to myself. I know that there are some days that I probably do get on here and talk to myself, at least for a while anyway, until people catch up or until they wake up or whatever. If you haven't said like follow me or, you know, to be notified when you're online, good morning, Desmond. Thank you. Thank you. If you haven't done all of that, you should. It helps. It helps the algorithms. And remember, I said that I'm going to try to find my little girl is having a little fit over here. I'm going to try to find somebody to help me with setting my page up differently, because one of the things I want to do is that since I'm on here anyway every day, I wanted to take this and morph it into some kind of a podcast, and so broadcast simultaneously over Zoom and Facebook, and then it's recording at the same time. So I'm going to be trying to change up some stuff a little bit coming up in the next couple of weeks. So, you know, just so you are still in there, because it's important to me. This is important work to me, right? I love doing this, and I hope that you love it as much as I do. And I'm working on writing my my book. And you know, if we come out of this pandemic and we're exactly the same, shame on us, right? So part of it is that I needed to do some work, and so it's not just the internal workings, but it's also working on the externals. We could be setting ourselves up for the setup for our come up or whatever it is. And so today we're working on self-esteem right now in Anatomy of the Spirit. Bam. We are working on self-esteem, which is the third chakra in here. You could tell that all the light is coming from one side. That's because I have a light on this side, and this over here is my window. And so when the sun is out, it's way too much light, but when it's not, it's not, may not be enough. So let me just cut on I have another light over here. Is that too much light? Let's hit the minus button. Okay, that's better. That's softer. All right, so we're working out Anatomy of the Spirit, and we're on the third chakra. And I just, you know, I love this book. And so I hope that one day, I don't know when, and this book was written years ago. Let me tell you about when it was written. It was written years ago, and, you know, I read it years ago. And glasses, Sandra, glasses. So I read it years ago, and there we are. There we are. Okay. So she wrote it in 1996, it's copyrighted 1996. And so, you know, if that's how many years ago? Wow, that's crazy, right? So when you think about it, you know, if I get my book out, maybe 20 years down the line, there'll be some people having a study group about my book. I don't know. You know, you never know. Maybe it's 2 years, or maybe it's 2 months after I publish, but it becomes this thing of you know, just appreciating the fact that you've got something enduring that could last a lifetime. So like right now I'm reading a book called The Golden Bough, Bough. That was Something that, I talk to people wherever I go. This is me. And so I was on the airplane when I was going to Miami, and I met a guy on there. Guy that was sitting next to me, white guy, from California. He was in Akron for a funeral. One of his college roommates, mother or father died. And so he was going back home to California. And so we had this wonderful conversation the whole time we were flying. And so he gave me I guess a couple of book recommendations, because we started talking, and it's like, I said, have you ever read Joseph Campbell? And he was like, oh, so then we had to shift in the seat, even though we had our mask on. And we got into the best conversations the whole time we were together. And so he said, well, have you ever heard of The Golden Bough? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, that's one of those books that you need to read. And so it's in the public domain. So it's on LibriVox. LibriVox. If I haven't said that here, I think I have. But LibriVox is spelled LibriVox, I do believe. Li and Libra, Libre, I do believe, or I. It could be Libri. Libra is book in a Latin language, right? And so like it's kind of similar when it comes down to a Latin language, like Italian or French or Spanish. It all sounds like about the same. And so it's book, and then vox is for voice. So LibriVox. And so what LibriVox is, and let me tell you this real quick, because you might be interested in this. I know I certainly was enamored with it and still haven't given up on the idea of it. But LibriVox is it's a place where they do voice recordings of books that are in the public domain. Public domain meaning that the copyright has expired. So say, for instance, if a copyright on a book is 100 years, then once the copyright expires, then you are free to, is basically all the restrictions come off of it, right? So then they could record it and do an audio book on it and place it in a free app so that anybody who wants to listen to it can listen to it. So if you're interested in listening to Moby Dick or any of the classic books, Uncle Tom's Cabin, I think is in there. The Souls of Black Folks, I do believe, by W.E.B. Du Bois is in there, and it's actually done by Toria's uncle, who is just one of the best readers that I have heard. Good morning, Teddy Red. It's good to see you here. But LibriVox is an amazing app, and the reason why that they're able to stay free is because it's basically people who volunteer to read books to other people. So if you go in there and say, for instance, you're looking for a particular book, or even not, there are, whether you are looking for some of the Grimm fairy tales. I remember actually reading the original Wizard of Oz, I do believe, is in there. And there are so many different things. And because it is, they are in the time, the language of the time. So that the movie versions are always different than the print versions of a book. And so you read things and you read it in a different, or you hear it read to you very differently. So sometimes you'll get a book in LibriVox and the book will start off being read by Desmond. And then the second chapter is read by Teddy. The third chapter is read by Nadine, the fourth chapter. So sometimes you get those patchworks like that. Other times people will voluntarily read an entire book. And so you get to follow along with that particular author. And so when I don't know if it was Up From Slavery or Souls of Black Folks, but this man named Toria's uncle, he read that book and it was just fabulous. I mean, I was just fell in love with his voice. And so I don't know where else he has done that work, but I'm sure that people who are interested in doing voiceover work or being a voice actor would do something like that to give them the added exposure of using their voice in ways that enliven or that bring life to a work. Because you don't want to read something and just somebody going along and say, I met Penny in a workshop. I mean, some people read like that, but it's nice when you can't actually tell that they're reading, that they're so well at it that they bring some life and some energy into the work that they're doing. So LibriVox is an amazing thing. And so and remember, I said that I try to get in, I'm usually working on 2 books at a time and try to get in a couple of books a week, but don't always. I'm not always successful, but I try my best to stay up on stuff. So today we are back in here. We are on the 3rd chakra in the section called Enhancing Inner Power. We have talked about this idea of developing your self-esteem and how important it is to honor oneself. And so as we go through here, we've been talking about several things when it comes down to this. And one of the things that Carolyn Miss says in the midst of her writings is that that this idea that from a spiritual perspective, the entire physical world is nothing more than a prop, right? And so, and all of this stuff is illusory. And a lot of times what we do is we get caught up and we make it about other things, other people, all of this other stuff, and that's to be caught up in the illusion. And so it's really, this thing is like, think of it like a classroom. You are in God's school right now. I mean, this earth that is spread out before you, think of it as God's school. It is preparing you for your ascension back into your real self. So this place that we are in is a way station. It's a momentary thing where you as a spirit selected to come to remember in this realm who you are in the larger perspective of things. And so I love the idea of just knowing that you are not here, that your life is about way more than this. And that's why we talk about the eternality of your soul. And so when you put it in that perspective, it's like, for me, right? I think it's big. I think it's really big. And I get excited about having everybody have that shift in consciousness, right? So yesterday, I don't know if you did this or if you took my advice, I told you 2 possibilities that you could do. I told you the possibility of doing mirror work. And if you have not tried it, I suggest you try it. That was at the very end of yesterday's talk. I also talked about writing a contract with yourself, and knowing that, that you are a powerhouse within yourself, right? When you recognize that you're a powerhouse in yourself, then that means that you are not dictated to about what you can and should do, right? That the outside authority, things that are outside of you, right? They have no authority over you. And so sometimes what we have to do is we have to, exercise our knower, our inner knower that says, and then so tell yourself that you are going to do a particular thing, right? So if it is a contract with yourself that I'm not going to complain or not going to say anything negative or, not whatever. If you decide that there is something that you are doing that may be against your highest and best interest, then making a contract with yourself to stop it, even if it's just for an hour a day, right? Or even if it's just for, 24 hours a day. But once you realize that you have the power to make decisions in your life and to carry it out, your body does not dictate to you. right? Sometimes what we do is we say, oh, I'm addicted, or I can't do without, or, I would die if we got all of these stuff that we put out there, right? But none of that is true. None of that is true. The you, that is in you. Oh my gosh, there's nothing that you can't do. And all you got to do is set your mind to it. So I know for me, it is this thing of, so A Course in Miracles says right in its introduction to the workbook, it said that, it says belief is not necessary, right? First off, it is saying that you don't have to believe any of this stuff. It's just asking you to try it, right? And so here's the thing. It says that an untrained mind can accomplish little. So if you've got this thing that you are thinking that your body leads, right? You're going to think automatically that there are certain things that you just can't do without. You're going to think, oh, I can't do without sugar, or I can't do without eating meat, or I can't do without sex for more than 2 or 3 days, right? Or I can't do without the weight. You are making it seem like your body dictates to you, but your body does not dictate to you. Your mind is what is in control. So you tell it to walk, you tell it to get up. And as a matter of fact, you actually, sometimes it's a psychological thing. Oh my God, I'm so exhausted, I can't go any further, right? Well, that too, we got a challenge. And I read this wonderful book called My Stroke of Insight, I do believe it is. And it was a wonderful book written by a neuroscientist who had a stroke at an early age. She had a stroke. And so one of the things that she discovered through the process of having a stroke was how her mind worked, and how we have neurons that are firing to and firing with certain things. And so her recovery from her stroke was all about trying to figure out how to reconnect her mind with her body in a way that allowed her to relearn everything that she had lost through the process. And so some of this is all about mind training and seeing how our mind tells us to move our pinky finger, or tells our stomach, or our stomach will tell our mind that we're hungry, and then we say, oh, I'm hungry, right? And so we know we feed the body, but you can also say, yeah, right now, not right now, right? Because I don't have time for that. And so it becomes this thing of us trying to figure out who's leading this. And so what I have to do with myself is I tell my body, I'm running this mess, right? I'm running this. And so when I reassert myself, that means that now when I decide that I'm not eating meat anymore, my body can't tell me, oh, but I gotta have meat. No, I'm running this. This up here runs this. And so once you put it in perspective like that, I think that that what you find is that, you are much more able to do the things that you desire to do. Tell it to, our bodies are a vehicle for our spirit. Our bodies are a vehicle for this thing called mind. It is the laborer, and the mind is a thinker. So who I am is inside of this mind of mine. So I got a force field that is actually around me. This is my atmosphere, right? So my body sits in that. Ooh, and I love how Paul in Acts says that it is in God that we live, move, and have our being. We are in spirit, right? And so it is not out there, we are in it. Ooh, and so, yes, and so you do continue on, right? This is not the end of you when your body is damaged or any of that stuff. That's not the end of you, right? It is, yeah. And sometimes it is about learning our connections and learning the truth about ourselves. So I love, love, love how this works. And sometimes, you know what is so funny, because one of the things that happens to us is most of the time we never give thought to how it works, that it works. We never give thought to the larger scheme of things, whether it is why we have the patriarchy, or why we have the stories that we do, or where the narratives come from. We never give thought to those things. But once we start to look at it and not just accept what we've been told, because we've been told that, and we've been told things and decided to accept them as true without really investigating. Here, let me tell y'all this. Because the Golden Bough is being really interesting. It's been an interesting book for me. One of the things that it talks about is how sometimes we have ancient ideas that we still practice today, but we don't recognize why it is so. And I don't know if I told y'all this before, because I found it fascinating. And so I keep talking about it because I'm working through it. There have been times, especially around Christmas and Easter and all of these other holidays that we celebrate, that I have looked for the symbolic meaning of certain things that we do, like an Easter egg. What's the point of an Easter egg? Or what's the point of a bunny? Or what's the point of a Christmas tree? Or why the holiday of lights? Why are there all of these other ideas and images superimposed over what is supposed to be Christian stuff, right? And so I'm always fascinated about where those types of things come from. And so as I'm reading this Golden Bough, there was this one thing in there that talked about what they call magic. And magic is, just kind of placing things that correlate together. Like now we understand it in the sense of cause and effect, right? But there is a correlation to certain things. And so one of the things that they had is that anything that comes from a person, like my hair here, anything that comes from a person still carries with it the energy or the essence of that person. And so if you had my hair, it's kind of like voodoo. It would be like, if you had my hair, then you could do things to me based on something that came from me. So whether it's what we now use for DNA collection, hair, fingernail clippings, discarded teeth, all of these things could be used against a person, whether they use them to make voodoo dolls or make you sick or whatever. They had this awareness then, back in antiquity, that all of these things carried the energy and the essence of a person. For those of you who came in late, this is all the hair that I lost. Not all of it. I still got more that I lost, but in the context of having those braids and getting those braids out of my hair, this is the hair that I've lost. You are not gonna see that going down the street like tumbleweed, because I'm gonna I'm gonna keep it. But so it's saying that all of these parts of us still carry with it the essence of who we are. And therefore, if it has the essence of who we are, then you can be manipulated through having some part or piece of you. So a pound of flesh, right? Remember them talking about a pound of flesh. Anyway, and so one of the things they spent a good deal of time is talking about people's teeth, especially when you lost your baby teeth. And it said that they actually had people who they would give the tooth to for safekeeping. They would send it to another city or another area or something else for safekeeping, because they knew that if somebody got hold of that tooth, even if it was later in life, like say, for instance, you ran for presidency or you ran for something else and they had some piece of you, then you could be manipulated by that. Now we just have what we call a tooth fairy to collect our teeth. We leave some money behind and we collect those teeth, but we never really think about why is it that we collect teeth? What do we do with those? I mean, and so we have present day practices that go back to antiquity without really understanding why. So all of this stuff is stuff that just seems to, when we start to look deeper at it and try to understand what it is that we do in this moment now, I think it's all, to me, this stuff is fascinating. I don't know about to you, but it's fascinating to me. So I was supposed to pick up today at this enhancing inner power, and I was going to talk about this woman, Penny, who Carolyn Mace uses as an example in here. And she met Penny at this workshop, and Penny was an alcoholic, and so too were her husband, but they owned a business together. And she was, it talks about how Penny's husband seemed to have an interest in Penny remaining an alcoholic. So when she would come in from work, he would hand her a glass of wine and say, babe, go and relax. And I got dinner, I'll do all the rest of this stuff. Well, she would drink herself into a stupor in the evening times. And, it would be just how she lived her life. And then it says that after 17 years of all of this, right? 17 years of marriage, 17 years of her alcoholism, 17 years of that whatever it is, that not being out of there. Hey, I'm sorry, y'all. Good morning, Jerry, and good morning, Everett. Thank you. Yeah, after 17 years of this, she finally decided, you know what, this is really a problem. And so it says that she went and she joined an Alcoholics Anonymous. And because she stayed in a small town, she didn't want anybody in her town to know that she was getting into Alcoholics Anonymous. So she went into another town to get in Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said sobriety changed her life. And so when she came to her senses, she was like, nothing seemed to work. Nothing made sense anymore. And so what she realized is that she was going to have to get out of her marriage, which meant that she was also going to have to change her profession because, it was, they had a business together. So, she ended up moving to another part of the country. She changed about everything about herself. She got a makeover. She changed her hairstyle. She dropped 20 pounds. She just totally changed her life, which sometimes is what we have to do, right? If the decision is to start a new life, sometimes it is really starting a new life, right? And so she divorced him, and she was talking about how she would, she just needed to be free, even though she realized that, this was going to change her total outlook. I mean, it was no longer going to be that they had a business or that she had a husband to lean on. It was, what, I got to do this. And sometimes it is like that. It is like we are making the decision to save our lives, our very lives. I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like you're in a fight for your life, and what you need to do is something drastic, which means almost like the analogy that I just got was, that idea of what I saw in my mind was Morpheus in that scene from The Matrix when he had been captured by the agents. And then, the helicopter comes down and Neo was telling Morpheus, come on, get, like basically, come on, right? And so Morpheus is pulling off all of this stuff off of him and running for his life. And sometimes that feels like what we have to do in order to save our lives. Sometimes it means quitting the job because there's toxicity in that job, whether it's a job working with your family or somebody else, that toxicity you just can't abide by anymore. Or sometimes it is, and I've had this happen to me, right? I've got friends that I have actually had to disconnect myself from, people that I love, right? Because sometimes it just doesn't serve me anymore. And let me say it like this, because I realized through many iterations of me that I have disconnected myself. But what seems to happen a lot of times is that we get in groups that, or we develop friendships, and these friendships sometimes develop into groups, and these groups develop into cliques. And then these cliques seem to not necessarily reflect who you are anymore. So sometimes you have to look around and think, woo, I do this all the time, right? And some people get offended, but it is really not even about them. It is about me and my atmosphere that I got to maintain. So we have to disconnect. If it doesn't serve you, we got to disconnect from it. If your family is, if you feel like your family is nothing but drama magnets and wreaking havoc in your life, sometimes you got to disconnect. And sometimes it's physically taking yourself out of that space. And sometimes it's just, like for her, she moved clear across the country. Sometimes it is just reordering your priorities and your steps and be like, yeah, no, I can't hang out with you anymore. No, I can't do that anymore. I tell a story often about the time when I was going through, I had lost my radio show, and which felt like I lost my voice, lost myself for a while. And I found myself, I often talk about it because I was up at that Wings bar with a bunch of friends that I had developed through that depression that I was going through. And they sitting up there yelling and hollering at each other and talking stuff, thinking that they sounded intelligent. And I'm sitting up there thinking to myself, who are these drunk people? Like, nothing wrong with being drunk, right? But it was 2:00, 2:30 in the afternoon, right? All of these people just sitting up in a dark bar. It's summertime, 80 sunny degrees outside, and we sitting in a dark bar. And I'm like looking around like, who are these people? Why am I here? And I stood up because I had that moment, like the prodigal son moment, where I came to myself. I stood up and I thought to myself, if I was in my right mind, this wouldn't be where I'm at. I had a girlfriend of mine who was in a relationship. I got to tell y'all this. And I'm not saying any names, so you don't know who I'm talking about, hopefully. But she was in this relationship with this guy. And, I used to check in with her because, she had really stopped talking to me during this time. But she was in this relationship with this guy who was supposed to be so great, and she was staying over at his house and blah, blah, blah. He got this and he got that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I go over to her house because I was just like saying to her, which is what I do sometimes, because there are friends that I just love, right? That don't draw me into a whole bunch of stuff. It's just, I love, love, love this woman. And so, I went over there to visit her, and I needed to put my eyeballs on her. So I go over to this guy's house to visit her. And I walk in and she invites me in, and I go downstairs and I'm looking. And, I went before I left out, she was like, so what do you think? And I said, I think you're depressed. And she was like, you think I'm depressed? I said, yes. I said, because you wouldn't be living like this. You wouldn't be in this situation if you were yourself. And I was like, I did. I told her, I said, if you need me, call me. I'm right here. I'm that girlfriend who, I don't sit there and try to tell you who to deal with, who not to deal with. I sit there and say to you, when you done, when you ready, I got a box of tissue. I'll be right by your side. Well, I will say to you that I didn't know how bad it was. It got bad to the point where her family had to go and rescue her out of that situation because she was in a depressed place, and she allowed herself to be in a relationship that wasn't serving her, that where the guy was abusive. And because some of this stuff she knowingly agreed to, I think she kind of went through with it. So like, say for instance, I'm just keeping it real with y'all, right? Because I can, and because it's me, right? Say for instance, she had this thing like, this is sometimes what guys do. Knuckleheads I'm not saying that women don't do it, right? But sometimes you get in these relationships with a knucklehead, and he'll say to you, if you really love me, you will let's do some threesomes, or let's get somebody else in here, right? Okay. So the guy kind of put it to her like that. And so she went and got a friend. She ain't called me. You don't dial me up for no stuff like that, right? She dialed a friend. And so her friend, she was thinking, she got somebody that wasn't, she didn't have the perception that this woman was as attractive to her as her, or any competition. So they started having these, threesomes together. Well, at some point, she began to be the person that was, left out. The person who wasn't in the threesome, they was having twosomes without that threesome kind of thing. And there was a whole lot of abuse that was going on, a whole lot of ugliness that went on. And then one day she had one of those prodigal son moments where she came to herself. And sometimes we need to have those moments. Those moments are just, all of a sudden, it's like a light bulb comes on and says, why am I living like this? Why am I going through this? And even the servants in my father's house live better than this. You weren't raised like some of the stuff that you're going through. It's not. And sometimes when we are in those dark places, we do things that we would never do if we were really feeling this love for ourselves, right? And so sometimes you have to, do an about face. For me, it's a total about face. It's bigger than aha, right? I get the aha, but it's bigger than that, because sometimes what it is that you got to then disconnect yourself from the tubing. Like, it's almost like cutting the umbilical cord, because you've been sucking some dark stuff through that cord, and you got to then cut it in order to save yourself. You got to sever some connections, and that severing seems like it is gone. Sometimes you think, even that, how do I do without that, right? How do I do without those things? And so, it feels like you're really cutting yourself off, and you are, but you are cutting yourself off of sour milk for something that really enriches you. And so we have those moments like that. And that's what Penny had. And Penny had to come up out of all of that stuff in order for her to realize that's not her truth. That's not where she was supposed to be. And so, so she went another direction. I'm making notes here because I want to make sure that I remember that I talked about that particular thing. That came to me out of the ethers, right? It's an experience that I can recall going through with my girlfriend, but it's not something that comes present in mind, and then it pops in and it's like, oh, that's good, right? Because I can talk about the moment I had my shifts, because I've had a lot of shifts at times, right? But it's like other people have these shifts where the light bulb comes on and you just say, why am I, why am I here? And then you remember, sometimes we can connect the dots. Yeah, this happened. One of my other girlfriends, she had lost a job. She got fired from a job, right? She got fired from this job. And when, initially we think that we're okay, right? We go along, we're walking along, and then we trip and we fall. And then we kind of, as we start getting back up, we're thinking to ourselves that we're okay. But what you notice is that you're not walking as tall as you did before you got that firing or before something happened. And so then in your diminished state, you start living your life, and you're living your life in that diminished state with diminished stuff happening to you. All of a sudden, the negative stuff is happening to you, and you can't figure out why you can't stand up straight. And then all of a sudden, right, sometimes it doesn't happen until after you have that that do that about face, have that moment of reckoning. When you have that moment of reckoning, maybe you look back down your timeline and say, damn, that's where I failed, right? That's where I failed. And to go back and heal that spot, to heal that place, and then come forward into this new moment, right? So sometimes we walk in those diminished states for a long time and not even know that we are in that place, not even know that that is still dictating who we are in this moment. Ooh, ooh, I know a man who had, his first child, his first child, and he was so like, oh, this child was his everything, just all of this, just his everything. And then come to find out when girlfriend got in her, she was like, oh, I'm going to sue for child support because I want this coming out of your check. And then come to find out it wasn't his child. Oh my God. Talk about a diminished state. It's like you fall down, you fall flat on your face, and then it's like, damn, how do I get back up, right? And that's where work comes in. That's where we have to do the work. And sometimes we want to say, oh, I'm okay, I'm cool, I'm straight. But you're not straight, right? It becomes, how do I work through this? How do I stand in a space where I get to work through these issues, right? And what we do is most of the time we look away without recognizing that there is something that needs to happen in order for us to stand up tall. She calls it nazah and had, put our 2 feet, our legs back up under us. That's what we have to do. And it doesn't just happen, right? It doesn't just, it takes something, it takes efforting. And so I think we learn more when you concisely check yourself. Yeah, but you know what? A lot of people don't. A lot of times we don't even know it because we're sleepwalking at a certain point. Right. And so if you don't know it, then something, and I tell you, that's why friends that are honest with you are so amazing. Right. I know people get mad at me because I say what the hell I'm thinking at the time. I told my friend, I spotted it. I said, you're depressed. What I didn't do was go over there and drag her by her darn hair and pull her up out of the house. I guess I could have done that, but I didn't, but finally her sister did. Her sister and her mother went over there and said, well, you know what, you coming regardless of what you saying that you want. You can't do it for yourself. I'm gonna get your ass up out of here. And sometimes that's what has to happen. Sometimes I think, but that too can backfire on you, because I done been there, you think that you helping somebody else out, right? You go over there, you intervene, you say, okay, you getting out of here, you come on up out of here, blah, blah, blah. And then they go running right back. Like, I can't do without him. Bullshit, right? Bull. And we do it all the time. It literally kills us. It literally is sucking the life out of us. And we don't have enough courage within ourselves to love ourselves enough to say, you know what, that ain't good for me. Right. And so sometimes what we have to do is we have to force ourselves to do work, right? Because we got to force ourselves and to do the work, to begin to do the work means that the light bulb becomes, gets turned on. So if it's the mirror work that I talked about yesterday, just, start telling yourself that you love you, right? Look in the mirror and say, I love you, right? I don't care if you think you already got it down, whatever. If you say, oh, I already, right? Then you got nothing to lose if that's the case, right? If you already love yourself, you have nothing to lose by doing some mirror exercises. But when you do the mirror exercises and you look at yourself and you say to yourself, I love you, see what comes up, right? And yesterday I talked about that idea that I should be writing this down. Yesterday I talked because there's, it would be nice to have this stuff indexed so you can go back and say, oh, she talked about this yesterday, the mirror exercises yesterday. She talked about you do the best that you can with the light that you have to see by, from Julia Cameron. She talked about that yesterday, right? Because that's what we do. So you got to be in a place where you can forgive yourself and know that at the time, if you knew better, you would have done better. Right? Sometimes if we know better, we do better. Sometimes not, right? Sometimes we know we're doing bad and we do it anyway. Right? What's that about? You know what? Because I'm gonna tell you this, like, say for instance, the other day, talk about know better, you do better. The other day, I got these, so Alan knows that I love peanut butter cookies, right? So he gave me some peanut butter cookies. He baked, fresh baked peanut butter oatmeal cookies, and he gave them to me. And I've had them in my house for a couple of weeks, and it was only 3 cookies. Now, don't get me wrong, they're big cookies, but there was 3 cookies, right? And so this is how, when you know better, you do better. I eat a little piece off of there. I break off a little piece and I just close the Ziploc baggie back and like that. So the other night, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I go in there and I break off a piece of cookie and I put it in, and even before it gets to my mouth, I'm saying, don't put that in there, don't put that in there, I put it in my mouth, and the moment I put it in my mouth, I'm thinking, like, why did you do that? So I ended up putting it back in my hand and putting it in the trash because I knew better. I knew better even before I did it. I know how I feel with sugar. I know what a sugar crash feels like in my body. And so I was making a decision not to eat all of that stuff. I'm not trying to eat stuff like that, right? Especially not at, right before I'm going to bed. So I spit it out, but it was like one of those knowing things, like right in the moment, like, oh, I know better. But is it habit? But honestly, I closed the Ziploc. Hey, Nasia, I closed the Ziploc baggie back, and I didn't drop it in the trash. I put it back on the table, right? Because I'm gonna have another moment where I need to remember that I'm trying to not eat that much sugar anymore, right? And so yes, so all of that becomes this thing. So even you've got absolutely nothing to do by doing those exercises, looking at yourself and saying, I love you, right? And when stuff comes up, being able to forgive it, knowing that you did the best that you could with the light that you had to see by in the moment. That sometimes we don't always make the highest and best choices for ourselves, but we can choose again, right? We can recognize those moments and then choose again. So now I got a couple of things that I want to say to that too. So there's this other idea that so if you can't admit to something, right? If you can't even admit to it, how do you heal it? You know what I mean? How do you heal something that you can't even own? So there's a part of us that, if, say, for instance, you've got bad habits that you don't particularly like. I use the sugar example. I use we can talk about any number of things, but sometimes we have issues with ourselves because we continue to do things that we don't like. So say for instance, you don't like the fact that you don't know how to say no, right? And somebody might find out that you don't have no in your vocabulary. And so they keep coming back asking or tapping you for the same thing, whether it's loaning out money or giving out sex or in anything that may diminish you in some kind of way. You don't have the ability, the musculature to say no. And so then you develop a you see yourself as spineless. You got judgments against yourself. If that's your thing, right? You might look in the mirror to do the mirror work and want to say, I love you, but you got judgments about the things that you're doing or the decisions that you're not making, your inability to say no, if that's the case, right? I don't know what your thing is. But if you begin to look at those things and then forgive yourself for the places where you weren't able to make a decision or change your mind or to own your space or protect yourself when you were a child, sometimes we're sitting up there thinking about something that we happened when we was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Somebody touched us and we had no control over it. Something that we did that, we didn't know any better. There, you got to forgive yourself for stuff, right? And know that, and here's a wonderful line out of A Course in Miracles. It says, what could you not forgive? I think it is how it goes. Sometimes sometimes it's like so long ago that I taught those lessons. But if you knew that everything that you ever encountered was planned, lovingly planned by someone who had your highest interest in mind, right? If, like at the beginning of here, when I talked about that you were a spiritual being that chose to come here, right? That chose, some of the life experiences that you had, knowing that they were going to cause you to make certain things. If you knew that everything that has ever happened to you was lovingly planned by someone who has your absolute best interest in mind, and did so because it knew that that was part of your God schooling, your classwork that you had to go through, what could you not forgive? What could you not forgive? What would you still hold against yourself if you knew that? Right? So if I sit there and I think to myself like, ooh, I went through that stage when I was, adolescence, where I was a klepto, right? I would go to the store and I steal a lip gloss. I go over somebody's house and steal something. I was just a klepto, right? And oh my God, thank goodness I learned something different. Thank goodness I had an experience that transformed me. But that was something that happened when I was that age. Here's what the thing is, right? You are not a bag lady. You are not a bag man. Remember the song by what's that woman's name? Bag Lady. But anyway, she was talking about, the people who drag stuff around with them, right? You are not that person. Here's the wonderful thing about time. The moment you step into it is the now moment. It's the only one that you have on power over, right? Everyone that before that ended already. It's done. It's done. And so just because at times you may have stolen something, you may have cheated with somebody, what Erica Badu, thank you. You may have done a whole bunch of stuff that you don't even respect. It's over. It's over. And just because somebody will remind you of it doesn't mean that it is a current thing. One of the things that we have a tendency to do is when somebody does something, like if you say something that is untrue, we want to call people liars, right? But you don't become that because you do that. You've done that. That stuff falls off the moment it's over with. If you are carrying it around, that's what you're doing. You're being what Erica Badu called a bag lady, right? You decided to put that in your sack and carry it with you. Drop all that stuff, right? And come fresh into this moment. That's the wonderful thing about the present. That's why we call it a present. It is now, and it is untouched. This is new. This is a new moment that you don't have. Look, you can, ain't no strings, right? But if you are holding on to the strings, then that string will be there. But you got to let some of that stuff go. You got to be willing to forgive yourself. And so when you stop pulling that stuff, dragging and carrying the past with you, learn how to forgive it. And sometimes it is like a whole ceremony. Like, oh my gosh, I was there. I knew I was there. I done some stuff that I didn't respect. And I did. But you know what? I get to be brand new today. I get to be brand new. And just because somebody wants to hold you to it doesn't mean you have to accept that. Sometimes it means that if they can't see you for the new person that you have become, right? So So one of the things, if you got people who are your drinking buddies, right? Or were your drinking buddies, and you stop drinking, just because they still drink don't mean that you have to, because you're in association with them, drink. But if now they're forcing the issue, then sometimes you will be like, okay, you know what, I gotta limit my time that I come and see you, or I gotta limit my time that I spend with you, because you can't accept the newness of me, right? Now that I'm vegetarian, if I go to your house now, right, I already know to bring my own stuff, because I already know what the people who are unable to respect the fact that I'm vegetarian. So I'm not going to sit up and complain about it. I'm not going to tell you, oh, you got to cook the beans with no meat in there. No, I'm bringing my own darn beans, right? And don't get mad because everybody want to eat my beans and not yours. I went to a friend of mine's house, and she made greens. And she made a pot of greens. She made this huge pot of greens. It was a big pot of greens. And she said, that's the one with the meat in it. And then she pointed to the little one that was one of those little quart saucepan pots. And she was like, that's the one with no meat in it. Do you know all them heifers ate the ones with no meat in there? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, what is that about? So that meant I got one little spoonful of greens, because all these darn meat eaters wanted to see how they taste with no meat. Oh, these are good. And so they start eating the meatless greens. That pisses me off. I will tell you that. Just so you know. Okay. That's okay. But I'm not living and dwelling in that space. I'm just telling you that that's what happens. So if you're going to make a pot that is meatless and a pot that has meat in there, trust and believe everybody wants to be healthy, and they're going to try to do the healthy thing, and they're going to eat just as many without the meat as they do with the meat. So that's just this the thing. Let me try to finish this up before I totally run out of time. So she was, in spite of all of the losses that Penny was going to go through, she needed to reclaim herself, and she needed to be free. And so she basically went through this moment of discomfort, so sometimes the shift may seem like, and I call it hang time, because that's one of the things that I love to associate it with, is that the trapeze artist. I mean, for me, that trapeze kind of thing is such a great analogy for life, that you go up there and you're on the flying trapeze, and there's a moment at which you have to let go of one bar and turn in order to grab the other bar. And I call that hang time. And so this hang time is something that can be so scary, because we don't know for sure, right? That other bar is going to be there, or that, what we know is what's familiar. It's that first bar that we got. But then the hang time, and when we have to make the switch, that right there is just really scary. So sometimes that hang time becomes part of the process. It means that, you know what, I got to sit in this place of trust. And that's where I am right now, right? So I don't know if how much I talked about the little incident I had the other day with my car, right? So they ended up towing my car from the scene. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with my car. So I'm in this moment of hang time. But even in the midst of me going through that, of them watching them hook up my car and tow it away, not knowing if it's going to be totaled out, or if it's repairable or whatever, even as I'm standing there in that, I got this sensation, this knowing that all things are working for my good, that this is going to work out. I don't know how long it's going to take. It could take, it could take a week, it could take a month, I don't know. But what I'm knowing is that I'm in hang time, and in hang time, I got the reassurance that all is working for my good. It's all going to be okay. So let me, so I was saying, forgive yourself of all of the stuff that is no longer, because it is over. It is done. You have no ability to go back and change what is past. But if you, in this moment, forgive yourself, then what you do is you do a healing retroactively. Sometimes people will still try to hold you. to what you've done before. But you know what? Even that you have to forgive. And you know what? Every time they're, trying to pull you back into some stuff that you ain't with no more, you know what? You just gotta reaffirm and use that as a moment to bless your situation and bless other people. Here's what another exercise that I used to have people do. When you find yourself constantly thinking about stuff that you want to be free of, right? Whether it is a judgment that you have over yourself. Sometimes our judgments are let me see. I want to try to give you I made some wrong choices about an outfit that I wore to an event. I didn't know it was see-through. I didn't know that it would embarrass even the people that were around me that knew me. It was just that because I didn't even try it on. I put it in the car. I changed clothes from one party to the other, and I never looked at myself to see how bad I looked. And for years, I walked around with this idea that my ass was showing. It was something, right? Until I just decided at some point, like, you know what, you got to get over this, right? Even if people remember that and they saw you and all of that stuff, you got to get over that, right? And I realized that some of my stuff, I brought that experience onto myself. And so one of the things that I used to do, and I told other people to do, was put a rubber band on your wrist, right? And every time you catch yourself thinking about something that you no longer want in your consciousness, just pop yourself, right? Pop yourself back into the present, right? So whether it is a wrong decision that you made in a relationship or with a child or with some, on a job or some place where you blurted out something that was really stupid or whatever it was, the moments that you were in pain or you remember over and over again seeing some domestic violence and didn't do anything about it, whatever that dark place is that you are tripping over, forgive it, and then start popping yourself back into the present. Just take that rubber band and just pop yourself back into the present. Don't linger in old negative thoughts. That stuff can bring you down. So anyway, Penny changed her life, right? She went through all the discomforts, the social ostracization, all of that stuff. And then she moved across the country. She did a whole bunch of stuff. She actually went and took some classes in something that she was interested in. Started a new job and ended up marrying a whole new man. And then her life just took on a different quality. And it says Penny's story speaks to the unlimited potential in each person to transform his or her life, given determination and a strong sense of personal responsibility. That means you take responsibility for yourself. These qualities of power are inherent in your third chakra. And so unless you set about, like doing this thing of unplugging from stuff that no longer serves you, whether it's negative people, negative remembrances, negative situations, even if it's your negative job, to unplug from that is an act of taking back your power, taking responsibility for your choices. And so then when you're able to do that, you're able to stand on your own 2 feet. That means that you develop a new level of courage and faith in yourself. And that's really what this is all about. How do I develop this new level of faith in myself? So Let's see. Yeah, I think I covered all the stuff that I was supposed to cover in that section. And I tomorrow we start talking about this thing called time a little bit, and our belief in it. I think I got everything in. Y'all I feel like, yeah, sometimes it feels like at 7:15 the bell rings and I take off running, and I'm running and I'm running and I'm running, and sometimes I don't even know that I'm running. It's just, stuff. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to God, to spirit, for the ways in which stuff just drops into my consciousness to talk about, and to pull off of. I'm so glad that I've got these experiences, these memories, and that I pay attention, and that once I'm able to hear it, I can then kind of, go into the context of the story. I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for you being here, because if it wasn't for you being here, then I'd just be talking to myself. But that's, I love her too. So let me see. I think that there was one other thing that I was thinking about this idea of self-love, because so many people have an issue with it. And so, I know you think you are grown, right? You are grown. You are grown and responsible and intelligent and marvelous and wonderful and all of that stuff, right? But do that mirror stuff anyway. Just go to the mirror and look in it, and start off with 10 times, just like I talked about yesterday. Start off with 10 times and just say, I love you. I love you, right? And see what comes up. If something comes up, fine. Look at it. Don't look away. Look at it and just, be like, oh, I didn't even know that you were there, right? It's almost like seeing a little younger person of you, and the judgments that we have on that person, right? Sometimes when I look in that mirror, I see that girl that went into that CVS and stole some lip gloss. I mean, that's something I carry with me. It was like something I just was like, oh, girl, what was you doing, right? Or I see the girl who used to take stuff personal, like rejection personal, or whether it was somebody criticizing me, talking about me, telling me what I couldn't do, making me feel like I was ugly or not wanted, or all of that stuff. I used to take that stuff really personal. And so it's almost like going back and healing that person, and saying, sweetie, stand up, right? Lift your head up. You that outside stuff, that stuff outside of you is an illusion, right? You can allow it to dictate to you for a moment, but that ain't your truth. Stand up, right? Keep your head up. Love you. And love all the beautiful things about you, the trees, the birds. Love all the beautiful stuff about you. And so that's a process. That's a process, right? And if nobody else sees your beauty, you got to see your own, right? Because what happens is that sometimes when people say stuff to us, it's not because you got on something different. It's because you think different. When you think different, you are different. So you just you just got to start just where you are, right where you are, and just begin to do that work on you, because you are worthy. You are here on purpose. I'm so glad you're here, right? Jerry, especially you, girl. And it's funny, Jerry, because sometimes you know how you teach things without really knowing that you're teaching somebody something. So let me tell y'all this real quick about Jerry. I met Jerry back at CSU, Cleveland State. I was working up there on a temporary. And Jerry was this woman who, when I saw her, I thought she was absolutely beautiful. And it was so funny because, you know, Jerry would come in there and she was always busy because it was right after the woman was killed in the car accident with the students. And, you know, Jerry would come into the office and she just seemed like she was just like, you know, how somebody looks like they're juggling and they keeping all these balls up in the air. And she just seemed like she was juggling. And so I used to watch Jerry, and this was right before I started getting on the radio for the first time, right before I got the job, or not the job, but right before I started being on the radio. And Jerry, in all the ways that I thought she was beautiful and gorgeous, one of the things that somebody said to her was something about something she had on. And she says, you know what? She was like, I always put on something that is totally, and this is my words, it wasn't hers, but she puts on something in the midst of her outfit that's totally absurd so that it throws people off. So there's got to be one thing that's about her that she had that was out of order, because otherwise she would be perfect. She didn't say that. That was my interpretation of it. But it was almost like she had to, you know, like she had to even if it was just, I'm gonna smudge my lipstick or something. I don't know. But it was like that was the conversation. And I don't even think she was talking to me. I was overhearing the conversation. And I was thinking to myself, like, that's interesting. And I don't know if it was self-depreciating or not, but it was something that always stuck with me. Are we okay to feel our fullness, to be our whole glorious self, you know? And at the time I wasn't even feeling my glorious self. I wasn't in that state of mind, but to watch other people that I thought, because I was Wanda Coleman, right? Say her name, say her name, say her name, say her name, bless her heart. And in Jerry Nuru and Donna White was all in that office, and I think that is where I met Adam Banks too. And Adam was, you know, and so it was that long ago, but it was working alongside of all of these beautiful Black powerful people in that setting that was just, I mean, it was like I felt like I got wings. And so from there, I got that radio show on WJMO. And so it was an amazing time for me. It was an amazing reckoning for me. I came alive. I met this guy, Walter, too, at that time. And it was just, you know, I was in that at that moment where those things just kind of blossomed for me. And so yeah, Jerry, bless your heart. I appreciate the, you know, somebody was sending her long stem roses at the time. I don't know who it was that was flirting with her, but it was just a lot of stuff that was going on. And so sometimes it is the little things that you don't even recognize somebody is eavesdropping on or looking at, and getting something, gleaning something from it, right? But yeah, and so here we come, I don't know how many years later, and yeah, still loving y'all, still loving this whole process and the things that we learn. We do the best that we can with the light we have to see by at the moment. So forgive yourself, whatever it was, and just come into this place of loving all of you, all the wonderful, beautiful things about you. And so with that, I'm going to let y'all go because I'm over time, and I think it's just time for me to go. So I will be here tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be here twice. I can't believe that Sunday rolls around so quickly. So I'll be here twice tomorrow. First thing at 7:15, 7:20ish, and then I'll be here again at 1:00 to do my church talk for Agape. So I love y'all, and remember, it's like or share or whatever. But y'all, I'm really trying to step up my game when it comes down to sharing, and yeah, loving all of that good stuff. All right, yay! All right, and I appreciate it. Thank you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. God willing, the creek don't rise.